My name is Lesa, and I am an alcoholic. By the grace of God, I've been sober since August 24th of 1990, and I am supremely grateful for that. It's such an honor to be asked to speak, and I was sharing while we were hanging around a little bit with Harvey and Travis. I get more nervous speaking to some of the folks from my home group than I do anywhere else because I just love you guys so much. So if this is really bad, blame God, not me, because I prayed before I got up here, and so whatever happens, happens. And some of you have heard some of my story or all of my story before, so again, sorry. I'll try to get it updated. But it's a privilege. It's a privilege to speak at Alcoholics Anonymous because Alcoholics Anonymous not only saved my life, but it made my life worth saving. I was teasing the other night saying this is sort of season 2. Right now things look okay, right? I got some decent clothes on. I'm driving a nice car. I got some jewelry on. Season 2 is looking bad. Season 1, not so much. Season 1 was kind of a hot mess. So you're kind of coming in the middle of the story. You know, there was a beginning to this, how I got to season 2. And in season 1, things were pretty grim. I was raised in alcoholism. I knew no other life. Both my parents were alcoholics, batshit crazy. I never saw I shouldn't say never, very rarely ever saw my mother with a drink in her hand, but she was drunk all the time. My dad you saw all the time with a drink in his hand, and he was a scary individual. He was about 6'4", 240, had a little bit of Native American, and he was one mean drunk. And when you're 3 or 4 years old, that causes some anxiety. And I was nervous. I can tell you, I had anxiety at 4 years old. And one of the other things I had that would follow me into my drinking was born with sort of an innate sense of shame. You know, intellectually, you can be told that whatever's going on at home is not your fault. But when you're a little kid, that doesn't feel like that. It feels like this nonsense is somehow your fault. And I had such a level of self-contempt and shame before I could articulate that. I couldn't put that into words. I just knew I was different than the other kids I talked to. First sleepover I went to, I was probably in about first grade, and we were talking with the other little girls, and I said, you know how when you're laying there at night and you're planning on where to hide after about 9 o'clock at night? Like I would wake up, and then I would hide. My sister and I stayed in the same room, and she would bribe me with pieces of bubble gum and extra Mrs. and Chinese jump rope if I would sleep on the outside of the bed. So the monster would get me first. And so I would plan where to hide. Where can I escape? Where could he not find me if I could get under the dresser drawers or in the dirty clothes? So I asked these young girls, I said, so, like, where's your best, when you're doing that? And they said, we don't do that. And I said, yeah, no, me neither. Intuitively, this is not going on in other people's households. And we sort of worked as a family very hard to keep it that way. Add to that the fact that we're very religious, which was super confusing to me. And I don't know that anybody said this, but what I heard was, if you're good, God will help you. Now, I don't know how bad you could be at 6 years old, but even at 6 years old, I was begging for some help. And as I got older and I got more involved in this church and craziness was going on at home, and I was super anxious. I mean, I'm worried about world peace and what's happening to other kids, and I'm chewing on my fingers and I'm rocking back and forth. I can't sit still in a chair. And, why no one at that time noticed that was odd, I don't know. But they didn't. And we lived in little bitty towns. I grew up in West Texas, so the higher the hair, the closer to God. Odessa, Texas, Friday Night Lights, been there, done that. Lubbock, Texas, Amarillo, Abilene, we moved a lot. We finally moved to San Antonio, which was the biggest city I'd ever been in. They had a mall, and I was home, never leaving. And we began going to this church, and I was about 14, 15 years old. And every week they would say, if you've been in sort of any type of doctrine, that on the Sunday when they're preaching, they say, if you need a reaffirmation of faith, come on down, and we will give you a reaffirmation of faith, which is like a blessing. Well, I'm down there every Sunday. I'm 14 years old. I'm at that altar every Sunday because I can't get relief. And I finally figured out, because I was very smart, as evidenced by my life, not, that I was at the Methodist church and they weren't using enough water. So when you get in the Methodist church, they just sprinkle it. They just put a little drippy drip. Well, it says clearly you need to be submerged. So you need to go under the water. So I go to my minister in full faith and say, you're not using enough water. And it says right here in Leviticus. No. So we go to a neighbor's house that belongs to the church and use their swimming pool. And my parents are there. Why, I don't know. Minister goes, we get into the pool. He dunks me down. He's saying whatever he says. And I come up out of that water. And it was like a crystal just shattered. I felt exactly the same. I felt the same shame, the same terror, the same anxiety as I felt before I was dunked. And at that very moment, I said, you know what, God, I'm done. Peace out. Tried, really tried. I can't get good enough to get help. So I'm going to go the other way because I've seen all these kids in my high school look like they're having a marvelous time. So I decided to join that group. Now, again, my parents are drunks. So they give me a car because they don't have time to deal with me. So I'm only 15. I'm driving them around quite often, as a matter of fact. And funny side story, when I was teaching my daughter to drive, and we're in the driveway, she was very apprehensive. She was like, I can't even drive a golf cart. And I'm like, everyone learns to drive. You're going to learn how to do it. And she goes, well, how did you learn how to do it? It was kind of this moment of silence. And I was like, well, basically, both of my parents were really, really drunk, and I just had to figure it out. I was like, it's really probably not the best way to learn, but you kind of just had to figure it out. She just rolled her eyes. She's like, oh, Mom. But nonetheless, I'm running around on my own. You know, I'm doing whatever I think I need to be doing, except now it's really getting hard to go to school because now I'm drinking on a daily basis, and I'm drinking as much as I can, as often as I can, as hard a liquor as I can get a hold of. And at 15 years old, I looked pretty much like I look now, only like 30 years younger. So drinking age at that time was 18. So I didn't have any problem getting alcohol. And some of you who are around my age may remember, not only could you drink at 18, but you could have an open container in your car with no seatbelt, and you could wave at the policeman and be like, hey, how's it going? So I didn't have any issue with getting it. I had an issue with putting it down. So I'm drinking to beat the band. And you know, this interesting thing happened. I'm getting tremendous relief. Now, I don't have any happy-go-lucky stories. That's not my story. That's not where I came from. I don't remember ever having fun until I got sober. It was just dark. Everything was pretty dark. And but alcohol is making me feel less anxious and less ashamed and less awkward. And that was worth its weight in gold to me. So I'm running around, and now it's getting difficult to get to school all the time because they want you there every day at like 8 o'clock in the morning. Well, if you drink like I drink, you don't get home till like 2 a.m. 8 o'clock is early. So I'm late like every day. And I'm a junior, I guess, in high school. And around this same time, I'm getting into trouble at school because I'm not showing up. My sister is leaving to go to college. And I intuitively knew, even without a conscious understanding of how grim our situation was, I intuitively knew that if I didn't leave, my dad was going to kill me. And I know you hear my hesitation when I say that word because I still, to this day, even as much work and as much forgiveness, I have a really hard time calling him that. When I first got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, I couldn't say the Our Father part. I joined in right after Who Art in Heaven because I couldn't say that word. I had such resentment and such fear. So about this time, I've decided that I should probably strike out more on my own, and I better get a plan to get out of the house. So I go to the school and I give them this long story. Now, granted, the high school's never seen my parents or their signature on anything ever. I signed everything. And I make this plea for let me go to school half a day and work half a day. Okay, fine. They could care less, right? Good, great. So I'm saving my money because I got to get out. I got to find an apartment. I got to get the hell out of here. And during that time, and this is just to kind of give you a glimpse into the depth of my mental state. In those days, you got demerits, and you got enough demerits, you got detention hall. Detention hall during the week, you had a stay hour after school, blah, blah, blah. You got enough of those, you got a Saturday detention hall, which was 3 hours. Back in those days, if you were a boy, you could trade in those 3 hours of detention hall for what they called licks, which is a spanking. The girls didn't get that option. I found that to be a terrible injustice. So again, just like I went to my minister, I went to the principal of the school and I said, I beg your pardon. I find this highly offensive and misogynistic that you will not let me be hit. I have a job I need to go to. And he said, we would love to hit you. Go to the dean of girls, Mrs. McCullough, God bless you wherever you are. She was 6'4", 240 if she was a thing. And she couldn't wait to hit me either. And they said, oh, we have to call your parents. My parents said, please, God, hit her. So everyone was in agreement. So this woman, I don't know if you probably, some of you may have, but anyways, it's a paddle and it's taped with white tape. It has a handle and it has holes in there. I see someone nodding, you've been there. And that woman takes this, you put your hands on the chair. She takes a step back and hits me with that thing, and I come about 3 inches off the ground, and I thought, oh, we've made a terrible error in judgment here. But I limped back victorious. I had been hit, so I didn't have to take my Saturday detention hall. I could go back to my drinking and leave home. So I moved out. I hadn't finished school. I decided it was way too taxing. I took my GED and got the hell out. And I left home when I was 16, going on 17 years old. And I was living in a little tiny efficiency apartment with bright red carpet and inflatable furniture. It was very cool. And I actually had a keg in my apartment, which really was not cool. And I am not a happy drunk. I am a sloppy, angry, out of control drunk. So much so that I remember one time sitting in a bar thinking that I'm fabulous. And this gentleman sidles up to me, and I think, oh, here it comes. It's going to put the hit on me because I'm fabulous. And he slides over to me, and he says, can I get you a cup of coffee? And I thought, I said some very unkind things, but, looking back on that now, that's how off the chain, just off the chain. Also, about time in the 80s, we had really big shoulder pads. And I can remember one time going into the restroom to see how fabulous I looked. And you know how the shoulder pad is slipped back, so you're sort of like the hunchback of Notre Dame, Hey, baby. Yeah, I was a hot mess, man. And I thought I was smart. I thought, man, I got this stuff figured out. You guys are a bunch of idiots. And yeah, not so much. But, the thing that comes to you when you're 16 years old and living on your own and you're not really college material is, well, I better get married. Now, I have told my story many, many times, and I've told this part many, many times. What I will tell you a little differently that is the truth is partly I got married because I was terrified of men. Absolutely terrified. And if I had him, I could say, leave me alone, I have a husband. Go away. Don't bother me anymore. Women didn't like me. Men liked me too much. And I couldn't find my people. My people was a vodka bottle. So I go to a party. There's a big outdoor party. I'm living in San Antonio, and there's a teenage guy passed out by the bonfire. And I go, oh my God, there he is. Match made in heaven. We have something in common. And so I set about finding out who he was. I met his brother. I met his brother's friends. Had I ever really gone to high school, I would have known he was in my school. Had no clue. Because he was like, he had a drinking problem, but he wasn't crazy. Crazy enough. Anyway, that poor boy doesn't know what hit him. I mean, honest to God, I set my sights on that boy, and I was like, he never knew what happened. Like, I don't know, 2 years later, we're married. And his head, I think, was still spinning around. I was all of 18 years old, and he was 19, so older man. Came from a very religious Catholic family who I'm sure was weeping in the corner as I married that poor soul. And, very much like a praying mantis, as soon as we made it, I needed to kill him. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to make his life miserable. And I look back at that now. I mean, I was 18 years old. My daughter is 19. She just turned 19 a couple of weeks ago. And I look at her and I reflect back on what I was doing and how I was at 18 years old. Like, what the hell? Just no sense of reality. Anyway, I set about to make this kid's life unbearable, all drinking all the time. And he could drink too. And then, listen, I didn't have a lot of depth, but I was super vain. Sure, that's shocking. So I cared very much about what I looked like. And I know this alcohol thing is starting to kind of mess with how I look. So that's a problem, right? So I'm starting to pay a little more attention to that. I'm trying to think of, how we can make some corrections here. During this time, my dad, his alcoholism has progressed to the point where he can't hold a job. There were several times where, I don't know if you're familiar with the actual path of complete destruction by alcohol, but it's not pretty. It is not pretty. And no matter what he had done, that was a miserable way to die. He died about in 1986 from alcoholism. And I remember that I did go to see him. And at that time, when you're in that stage, your blood doesn't coagulate, so blood is dripping from your nose. And eyes and ears. And I remember he looked at me very sincerely and said, "Why aren't I getting any better?" Because we'd been here before, 100 different hospitalizations and whatnot. And I said, "Because you're not going to get better." And I think that realization really surprised him. Not because of who he was, but because of alcoholism. And what I will tell you that's so surprising about that to me is that I saw no connection between his drinking and mine. None whatsoever. I thought, you poor bastard, just drank yourself to death. Excuse me, I had to go to the bar, like no connection whatsoever. So he passed in 1986 from alcoholism. My life is progressing down that same road, unbeknownst to me. My husband at that time, my ripe old age of 20 or 21, he develops late onset juvenile diabetes, which means I can no longer drink alcohol. That's the only thing we had in common. This is a problem for me. So first thing I do, as soon as I get the news, the man is hospitalized, seriously ill, seriously ill. I run to the beauty salon and I cut off all my hair and I get a little perm and I get some glasses, even though I didn't need them. They were just clear because it was a thing. I was going for the look of the grieving wife that's got to take care of the sick husband now. I bought a rocking chair. I thought that was appropriate because I'm going to have to rock a lot, apparently, in this delusion. And and then I also realized simultaneously as I'm at the salon getting my hair chopped off and adopting this new look, I'm trapped. How am I going to leave this guy? He's sick. You can't leave a sick person. Do you know what people will say about you if you leave a sick person? Like, you can't. What about like that? This isn't good. This is not good. So he gets released. He comes home. Now I'm going to have to start drinking without you. So that's a bit of a problem. So now I'm lying about where I am and how long I'm there and what I'm doing and why I'm home at 3 o'clock in the morning drunk and half dressed and, my clothes are wet. We don't know. It's not pretty. And I decide the only way out is to kill myself. So I make a vain attempt. Fortunately, at this time, a friend of mine was staying with us because I think he might have just stepped over my cold, dead body. And I don't know that I would have blamed him. She, however, was concerned and called 911. So as you live in the humiliation of a failed suicide attempt, where they won't let you have utensils or toothpicks, I don't know really what they think you're going to do with that. But and the doctor whose pills I used to try to kill myself was super annoyed with me. And I was deeply, deeply depressed that I was still here and I don't have a way out of here. And I'm going to go home with this guy who I can't stand. And I guess I'm just going to call it a day. So now I enter what I like to call my Morticia phase. I'm letting my hair grow out, but I wear it in a ponytail, all black, all the time. I get a job in healthcare related to hospice and independent living for nursing homes, which is a tad depressing. And I'm full on to this, like I'm embracing my depression now. I don't eat much. My cheeks are kind of sunken in. And the fellow that I was married to at the time, his brother was also married to a young gal that never drank in her life. And I will tell you the gift of God in Alcoholics Anonymous is the people that got me into Alcoholics Anonymous, never been there. Yeah. So she calls our house one day. She and I had never really had a conversation because when I say she didn't drink, I mean, we don't listen to secular music. We bake our own bread. We were worlds apart, like Mars and Earth. And I answer the phone. She's calling actually to speak to my husband. I answer the phone. And she and I have a conversation, and she informs me during this conversation that she's been getting some help and that she went to a rehab and that she has this fabulous therapist and would I like to talk to him. And I go, oh my God, I've seen shrinks out the yang. I don't know how many. I have lists of psychiatrists and shrinks and whatnot that I've seen, and I have lots of prescriptions to prove that. And I say to her, okay. And she goes, look, he's really hard to get a hold of. And I was thinking to myself, oh, good. Because I lie all the time, but I like to try to get close to the truth. So I was like, oh, I'll try to call him. And then when he doesn't, like I don't get him, I'll be like, oh yeah, I called him. So I call him, he answers like on the first ring. Again, God does for us what we can't do for ourselves. So this gentleman says, well, what are you doing Sunday night at 9 p.m.? Now, as a very active drunk, nobody's doing anything at 9 p.m. on Sunday night. I was like, what? 9? Isn't that like, no. Anyway, I agree to see him. I go to see this guy. He's about 7.5 feet tall, has bright red hair. We are still in contact today, by the way. And he invites me in. He's in a trailer behind a church. Now, we have 3 strikes against us already. It's by a church, it's in a trailer, I don't like trailers. And he's a little scary looking. He's like a giant Keebler elf. And he invites me in, and I'm looking around to see if there's some, legitimate certificates on the wall, because I'm not really, really sure about this. And he begins to talk to me. And all of a sudden I think, now I'm way out there now, that he can read my mind. Literally think he can read my mind. Now look, pretty much any sober, normal person would take one look at me and know there's a lot of problems over here. A lot of them probably look drug-induced or alcohol-related. And he asked me how much I drink, and I swear to God, I thought he could read my mind. I'm like looking around, I'm thinking, okay, concentrate on the Statue of Liberty. Concentrate on the Statue of Liberty, because that way he can't read your mind. He'll only come up with the Statue of Liberty. And he's asking me these questions, and I'm answering like honestly, and I got to tell you, I don't know where that came from. And after like an hour conversation, he says, you're not leaving here. We're going to make some arrangements for you, and we're going to get you some help. Cool. I go to this rehab by the grace of God. They detoxed me, which was really important at that time, because the level of my thinking was so crazy that you don't know that you're crazy. And so as I detoxed a couple of grand mal seizures later, I came to realize, like, my first interactions where people were just like, wow, I was really crazy. And Nurse Ratchet, who asked me about my drinking, I told her in all sincerity, I used to be an alcoholic, but I'm not anymore. And I meant that. I hadn't had a lot of drinks since I started picking up those prescriptions of Xanax 6 months earlier. I don't know what you're talking about. They took those away from me too, by the way. And it introduced me to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I had a lot of therapy to treat my trauma. And what I want to be very clear about, and I love I mean, when I say I love this man, I'm not kidding. I love this man. He saved my life, but he never tried to treat my alcoholism. Not once. He treated my trauma and my mental illness. He did not treat my alcoholism. Alcoholics Anonymous treated my alcoholism. So I get in there, I'm getting to the bottom of some stuff. I'm having a lot of revelations, none of which are pleasant, but I'm in a good supportive environment. I get detoxed. I'm evangelized. I make up a sobriety date. I lie. I know you're shocked. And I go out in the world and evangelize everyone that I know to say, oh, look, well, I'll have to stop drinking. This is terrible. It's not good for you. And I set my beloved free, happiest day of his life, and, start on my new adventure on my own. And I'm a little nervous. I'm a little tense. Not really buying the whole AA thing, because there's like 3 things that really bother me. We, God, and no drinking. Other than that, these are fabulous. And it took me like 10 minutes to read them. And I was like, okay, we're done. Like at work, the steps, I just read them. I am supposing that's what you mean. And we're good. And I found a meeting outside of this rehab place that I went to once a week that was barely would qualify as an AA meeting. It kind of had other connotations attached to it. And a lot of it was religious. I know that's surprising. And I'm in one of those meetings, and really, I don't know what you guys are doing. Like, I don't believe for a second that you're not drinking. So this guy he's speaking or whatever, and he says, I can't stand those people that talk the talk but don't walk the walk. And I said, well, I'm one of those people. I raised my hand. Yeah, that would be me. I'm like, aren't you guys drinking sometimes? It's very quiet in the room when you say that in Alcoholics Anonymous. I was like, maybe just a little bit, like once a year. I mean, sometime. They're like, no, not at all. That's the point. And that's when I was like, well, this is just not for me. The second part of that was I did sit in a room and hear them read, as Bruce did for us, in those words that they read in every meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, those of us who are constitutionally incapable of being honest with ourselves. And I knew that I was not capable, or I believed it anyway. Also knew I had grave emotional middle, just like that whole thing. When I would hear that every time, I'd be like, I'm screwed. So I leave there free now because I've said my piece. And I call all the friends I've evangelized and I said, let's get it going, guys. I'm back. And I set out to get drunk. And the most amazing thing happened. I start drinking and nothing changes. I still feel just like when I came out of that pool, all the shame, all the guilt, all the fear, all the anxiety. And now I have you people in my head because I've been to meetings. I can like hear their voices in my head, like super clear, like you're standing there talking to me. Now my words are slurring. I'm literally falling down drunk. I'm falling down in the street and I can't stop feeling. And I'm petrified. I'm like, this is my solution. If I don't have this, I don't have anything. Somewhere during that night, I black out. I come to, there's a gentleman standing over me. I open my eyes and I did that day what I had done many times before, which was turn your eyes as far as you can without moving your head so you can get a lay of the land. And I figure out where I am before I respond. So I see some shrubs. Okay, good, we're outside. I see a front door. Okay, progress. Front porch, feeling like, could be. And this gentleman is like, Miss, are you all right? You know, and I had even longer hair then, if you can imagine. And I'm sure somewhere during the night I had puke. So I wipe the puke out of my hair. You know, I stand up and I put my hand out and say, nice to meet you, and introduce myself. And he says, oh my God, this is my son's house. I live across the street. I'm going to go across the street and call him. I'm sure he doesn't know you're out here. And I'm thinking, I don't know how he wouldn't. I'm probably been banging on the door all night. And I said, would you? That would be lovely. So he turns around to go walk in and I run. Physically run down the street. And I get to the end of the street and I see my car. My car's there, the keys are in it. I jump in, I take off. Gentleman's house is a lawyer, guy that I knew. Guy that woke me up was his dad. He's a judge, lives across the street. Just a dad, humiliating. And I rush back to my little apartment and I call Alcoholics Anonymous. And this young woman speaks to me and she says, can you get to a meeting? And I said, I'm too sick right now, but I will be able to come tomorrow. The date that I walked back into Alcoholics Anonymous was August 24th of 1990. I've not had a drink or a drug or mind-altering chemical since that time. Now, when I came back to Alcoholics Anonymous, the best that I hoped for and asked for was to just never drink again, period. I didn't need anything else. I just didn't want to wake up like that one more day. You know, I never planned that. I never planned to wake up outside someone's door. And I did what they told me to do. They said, sit, I sat. They said, read this, I read it. Now, again, I'm still hearing this thing about the lion. And I say to my sponsor, I'm like, I'm really nervous about this telling the truth thing because I don't know how to do that. And she said, well, we're going to practice. Well, we're going to practice. And when you tell a lie, you're going to stop and say that was a lie. So I'd be talking to somebody and I would lie because that's what I did. And then I would say, oh, that's not true. And I would correct myself. Now, fortunately, all the people I'm talking to at this time are in Alcoholics Anonymous. So they don't care. They just laugh, pat you on the head and say, yeah, keep coming back, you know, or go on with their story. You know, it was amazing. I was just mortified. And they're like, so cute. You know, oh my God. And I'm sitting in a meeting and I'm starting to think about other people. I will tell you the other thing about my life is I learned how to survive. I did not know how to live. And I'm going to meetings, and about 20, 30 days in, all of a sudden one day in a meeting, I realized I hadn't thought about a drink. And I knew that something outside of me had done that. I knew I didn't do that on my own. And it cracked just enough for me to think, maybe there is a God. Maybe this thing they're talking about, maybe there really is one. And then they told me, you can choose your own perception of God. I'm like, no, you cannot. It is outlined what he is. No, you cannot. That is not allowed. And they're like, it is allowed. I'm like, no, it isn't. Yes, it is. I mean, argued. And then I told them I didn't have any resentments because why? Because that's not nice. So then they tricked me into making me make a list of things I felt guilty about. That was about 150 pages. Then they said, guess what? The guilt is the reverse side of resentment. I was like, oh, they tricked me again. So they tricked me a lot in the beginning. And I'm rocking along and I'm getting sober and staying sober and rubbing that desire chip every day because, listen, I'm still anxious, but I'm finding relief in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And for me, I was relieved of the craving for alcohol. That left me in those first 30 days. I also got sober in San Antonio at Club 12, which is an AA club where we had meetings from 7:30 in the morning till midnight. And there was a coffee bar. You could get lunch, you could get dinner, you could get coffee. And believe me, I lived there for the first 30 days. I was there all the time. When I wasn't there, I was going on service work. And I fell in with a group of workers. Like, I didn't know it was optional not to be. We took meetings all over the place. Detoxes, we took them all over the place. And I'm starting to get a little sobriety, and then there he is. So AA girl meets AA boy on campus. My sponsor is weeping uncontrollably. And we grew up in the middle of Alcoholics Anonymous. You want to talk about a hot mess. I mean, I had a lot of unresolved issues, and apparently this was my learning opportunity. And we did everything. We were very entertaining. I just spoke back at my home in San Antonio, and I was laughing about how entertaining we were for the old timers. I think they were laying bets on who was going to fight when and who was going to break up with who, and are they together or are they not? And although, as I laugh about it now, it was excruciatingly painful. I'm sure that's probably what people feel like in high school. Since I never felt anything in high school, this will advance a little bit further down the line what happened to me. But what it did do is it made me work the hell out of those steps. I mean, my sponsor, I'm telling you, we worked hard because I didn't have any living skills. I mean, none. I was raised by wolves. I had a sponsor. They basically adopted me. I had to learn how to make my bed, had to learn how to tell the truth, had to learn how to pay a bill, had to learn all that stuff. I learned that in season 1 in Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, every single thing I learned and was loved in to Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I'm still having the problem with we. I'm a very isolating person, and if you came from where I came from, it was just safer. And one day, my sponsor invites me to her Christmas dinner. Now, her and her husband were like my parents, and they were lovely, lovely, lovely people. And he had 30 years like what I have now. I was terrified of him because, again, I feel like they have X-ray vision, right? Anybody with that amount of time could just read your mind. It's terrifying. And they invited me, and we have this lovely Christmas. Of course, I said yes, and I was going to not go. I was going to lie and make up something and not go. But I was afraid I'd get caught, so I went. And I thought, well, I'll just stay for a minute, and then I'll leave. So she has this lovely Christmas dinner, which none of those things happened at my house ever. And lovely, and they bought me gifts. I was more, I didn't know what to say. I didn't have any gifts. I mean, I still have a pre-sobriety car where you got to crawl in through the passenger side and over the console to get to the driver's side because the door is smashed in. And those are early sobriety vehicles. And we're sitting there, we're having this lovely time, and I get a little more anxious. And when I leave, right, we hug, I take my gifts, I go to my little apartment, and I probably have about 4 or 5 years at this point. And I sit down in this chair, and all of a sudden, this feeling comes over me. And I don't know what it is. And so as I did I call my sponsor, because that's what I do for everything. And I say, I don't know what's happening. And I describe to her what this is. I said, I don't know what's happening. And she says to me, Lesa, that's love. And I knew at that moment that I would do whatever it takes to have that feeling again. That was the grace of God. It was like a cool wind blowing through my soul. It was very much like Bill describes it. And I wanted more of that feeling. And I thought, man, if I can have that again, even for a moment, I'm willing to do whatever you tell me to do. And I did. I mean, I leaned in. I was already running around, but we quit that nonsense, that fella and I, and went our separate ways. No harm, no foul, just growing up. And I began a new journey and a new level of understanding in Alcoholics Anonymous. And they would read that section that we'd been transported into a new universe. We had a new perception and a new outlook on life. And I had wondered during those first few years why I didn't have that. And I finally got it. And man, we were just on fire. I don't know, had 100 girls I'm sponsoring, I'm going all over the place, taking meetings and just having so much fun in service work in Alcoholics Anonymous, making coffee for conventions and I don't know, any job. I just loved it, just loving it, loving the characters that are in there. We all had names for them and nicknames for them. There was this one guy who used to say, he'd get all mad and he'd say he wasn't coming back. And then he'd come back the next day and be like, hey, hey, John, how's it going? It's good. Oh, we just had so many lovely people. And I get this job. I've been working. I lose a job, actually. I'm almost homeless in sobriety. And all the people I sponsor are like, gosh, I hope whatever happens to me is not as bad as what's happening to you. Nothing humbling about that. Oh, and now I'm tending bar because I can't get a job. So I'm a sober bartender. I'm actually managing the bar. They were thrilled that I didn't drink because they're like, oh my God, she won't steal the booze. It's very interesting when you're tending bar and you're sober. People tell you your drinks are too strong. You're like, huh? And then also you run into people who have recently left AA. That's an uncomfortable situation. I didn't have to do it very long, and believe me, I needed the money, so I did it. But my life starts to turn around, right? I face those things. I face my amends. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And my life starts to turn around. I have this little job, new sales job. This woman takes me under her wing. She's loving me. She's teaching me all these things just out of the goodness of her heart. And she says to me one day, hey, these guys called and they want to offer me a job. I'm good where I am. I'm immediate. I'm good where I am. Go apply for this job. So I go over and apply for this job. It's a great job, great offer. The guy offers me the job. Now he gives me an offer letter. Now I don't know, but I'm in my late 20s. I've never had an offer letter in my life. Those are not the kind of jobs that I have. So I call my sponsor and I said, oh my God, I've never seen this much money in my life. It's an offer letter. I don't know what that means. And so I'm reading it to her and I go, do you think that salary is for like 1 year? And she's like, well, I don't know. Call him and ask him. I'm like, oh my God, that's so embarrassing. Really? She's like, yes, you have to ask. Oh my God. So I call him back. And I say, hey, I'm super excited. I want to come work for you. Only one thing, I just have a question on the salary. Is that just for like one? And he interrupts me. He goes, oh my God, I knew you were going to want more. I was like, what just happened? I was like, what a shrewd negotiator you are. I was like, yeah, no, I just don't know anything. But I got that job literally by the grace of God, and my life took off. I had so much fun. I went all over the country. Oh my God, we're at celebrity events and having a great time. I'm playing golf with my sponsor and her husband. Listen, I'm on fire with AA life. I am heading into season 2, baby. Season 1 is over. We've survived. We're coming into our own. And one day I'm in a meeting and there he is. And I can tell he's checking me out. And I'm kind of avoiding him because it's too messy. After that other thing, I don't date. And he even asked the other guys in AA, he's like, hey, who's Steve? They go like, no. You don't want to mess with her, man. She'll hurt you bad. Because I say things like, no, you need to focus on your sobriety. Get away from me. So I see him, he's kind of checking me out. And I see him when I speak one time. And after he comes up and asks me if I'd like to have dinner with him sometime. And I said, sure. That's really high voice. And he was new. Look, I got 10 years now. And the dude's new. He's not even got a year yet. And I thought, oh man, I'm going to have to tell my sponsor. Fortunately, they were out of town. And so I said, okay, look, I'll go to dinner with you, but you give me your number. I'll meet you there. This is how it's going to be. And he jokes now and says it was the longest week of his life, but whatever. And so we go to dinner. He's new. He's trying to be very AA. I think he told me he was on the advanced program. And I said, that could be a problem, son. You might want to take that down just a notch. But what happened was he tricked me in and then we got married. And I'm going to say that's how it rolls in Alcoholics Anonymous. Dinner and then you're married. No, there was like a year in between. But listen, he and I have grown up in sobriety together. We were married 20 years this year. And when we first got married, we had a beautiful AA wedding, very small and intimate, but beautiful. And very soon after that, I was like, look, tick tock, I want to have a kid. And people who knew me were like, who are you? You don't even like kids or dogs. I'm like, I know. And we got very lucky. We were blessed with a child. And what I will say about that is God is so clever. Basically, this isolating, shutdownable woman that you see before you made sort of a deal with God. And when that child was born, I knew I couldn't do that. I couldn't leave. I can't step back from that. I got to stay in line. I got to stay in the world. I got a deal, man. I made a social contract with the universe for that kid. I owe her. And God tricked me because it's like being kicked to death by rabbits. Like, I had to be nice to people at her school when she was little. I have to meet people. Like, what? Hang out with people that aren't in AA? What? No, it's not comfortable. But she was lovely. I mean, I've never loved anything that much in my life, not ever. And I think about that and that how much God loves us more than that, and it takes my breath away. And she turned 19. Which is just mind-boggling to me. And she's a dancer. I've never watched her dance without crying. And she's a beautiful, beautiful, smart, sassy almost woman. And as she was growing up, what I started to see about my life and the changes that Alcoholics Anonymous has made for me, we had to have these kinds of conversations because where she comes from is a pretty ripe environment for our program. And so we started having those kinds of talks, and on both sides of our family, my husband and I both, she has no lineage of grandparents. They're all dead from alcoholism. And so one day when she's a little bit older, she's probably 10 or 11, something like that, we were sitting at a table and she says to me, like, how come I don't have any like stories about our grandparents? Like, because she's with other kids and they're with their grandparents and they're talking about, oh, we had fun on the farm and this and that. And I'm like, baby, because we don't have those stories. I don't have that story. I said, I would love to. She goes, well, tell me something. I go, all right, you're old enough. I'll tell you this. So your grandfather and your grandmother were having a bit of a tiff, and he was going to shoot her. And he missed her and shoots himself in the foot with a .357 Magnum. That's the kind of stories I have. I don't have apple picking and blueberry picking. I have, oops, shot myself in the foot. And so, first she was a little bit taken aback, but then I started laughing, and then she kind of started laughing. I go, well, it is an interesting story, It's not boring. But I said, the gift about that is you don't have that life. She was at a little dance school. She went to Duke University in the summer to take a program there that she auditioned for, and we were very excited, and I took her there. She was probably 15 years old. And we're in the room, and I'm getting ready to leave her. She's ready for mom to go. They start to get that look like, yeah, get the hell out. And so I said, okay, let's go, but let's just say a quick prayer, which I force on her. She tells me all the time I'm always sending her some fabulous affirmation or thing, and she'll tell me, oh, I don't read those. I was like, yes, you do. I know you do. I go, well, someday you'll read them. But we say a quick little prayer, and I give her a big kiss, and I said, okay, I'll see you in a few weeks. And I stood back, and she's in a dormitory, and I got like this flash of where she's going, right? And she's in this little dormitory in Duke University. It's 100 degrees outside. There's some window unit cranking. But it's so normal. There's people downstairs. People are dropping off their kids. People are saying, hey, goodbye, blah, blah. That is not my experience. That is not my husband's experience. I'm watching this, and I know that this is Alcoholics Anonymous. This is God. This is generations of alcoholism. Chains being broken. The power of that, like that moment of feeling the presence of God, was overwhelming to me. I turned and ran down the stairs because I was getting ready to bawl, and she teases me about crying at everything. I'm crying all the way home. But I knew in that moment, regardless of the difficulties and challenges that she's going to have in her life, they're not going to be those. They're not going to be thinking about where you're hiding in the laundry basket or my parents aren't showing up for me. She doesn't have that. That's Alcoholics Anonymous. That's not me. That's God working through me. Shortly after that, my mom, who was living in a retirement home and was separated from her alcohol for a brief time during that spend, started to do poorly. And I got a call. I was getting ready to go see her anyway, but I got a call. You need to get here quickly. And I said to Lindsay, oh my God, I've got to go. Got to get to the plane. I call Nick. I got to get to the plane. He goes, just drive to the airport. So I jump in my car. I'm driving to the airport. It's about 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And I get to Southwest Airlines, and my husband tries to book it online. He goes, it's too close to the flight. I can't book it. You're going to have to book it yourself. So I run in there and ask these ladies, I go, I got to get on this flight to San Antonio. And they said, it's too late. There's not enough time. And of course, I burst into tears. And these two gals, God love them, look down and start clicking their nails. All of a sudden, they hand me a boarding pass, and she goes, run. And I was like, running through the thing. I throw my bag on the TSA belt, and I'm like, I don't know if there's probably water in there and stuff. Just take it out. Just take it out. I don't need it. I don't have much time. And this lady, who, honest to God, if she was sitting in this room, I wouldn't be able to tell you who she was. She weighed like 90 pounds and smelled like Marlboro cigarettes. Reaches over and takes my hand, and she said, who is it? And I said, it's my mom. And she said, you whisper into her ear right now to wait for you. And I promise you, she will wait. I've never seen that woman again in my life. I ran through that gate, got on the plane, called my AA friend, my bestie Roy, to pick me up at the airport. He did. We haul ass out to Bernie where she was. I get down into her room. My sister's there. My nephew's there. And my mom looks at me and we hug, and she says, oh my gosh, I didn't think you were coming until tomorrow. And she kind of has this moment. She looked around. She's like, there's a lot of people in the room. How do my eyebrows look? Which is a question we all ask ourselves. And then she kind of had a second where she's like, oh, why are y'all all here? Because it's kind of like it's nighttime, And I said, because we love you, Mom. And that's the last word she heard from me. she lost consciousness. She did not pass till the next day, the next evening. And when she and I were alone in that room, about 6 o'clock that evening, and I held her hand when she left this plane, I knew that was Alcoholics Anonymous. And I knew that was my gift to her. We had a complicated relationship. Alcoholism will do that. But what Alcoholics Anonymous did was restore that relationship that I left her. I left her. And I was grateful that she brought me into this world and that she was my mother. And it's been some time now that she's been gone, but I think about her a lot. I think about her a lot. We took Lindsay to her freshman year in college. And my husband is so darn cute because he doesn't know anything about college because he left school pretty early. And he's just, he's so excited and confused about everything that's happening about the school. And I'm like, no, this is normal. We just go there and we'll unpack everything and then we leave. Like it was a new revelation to him that we leave. We're not staying here with her while she goes to school. We go back home. And we moved her into her dorm, and she met her roommates who were lovely. And again, very, very normal. These people seem very, very normal to me. I stood there and took directions. I was very proud of myself. I practiced all the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous. Did not make suggestions and requested. I simply moved furniture where I was told to, and wrote checks. And we went to leave. We had a couple of events before we took off. And the last event, listen, if you think I cry at grocery store openings, you should have seen me. So I've got that stuffed way down because I'm holding it together, got to be strong. Well, they have this candlelight ceremony to say, to make the parents leave and to leave your kids at the school. And they have, oh my God, the song Pray. They're singing that song. And the minute the music starts, so it's me, my daughter's roommate, my daughter, and my husband, and they're holding candles. The freshmen are holding candles. And they start to sing that song, or Jelly, there's people there singing. And the music starts to pray. And I look at Lindsay in a panic, and she looks at me, and then she looks at her roommate, and she goes, my mom's getting ready to cry really hard. I was like, I am! I can't hold this part back. And I hugged that child, and I walked away from her and left her in that room. And I sent her a little video when she was, and I'll close with this, when she was about 5 years old. I traveled a lot, and I still had that fabulous job, and I traveled. And I was in New York at a big event, and she and I had a chat before I left about not crying. If you do good and have fun while I'm gone, I'll give you $5 or whatever money I promised her when I got home. So she sent me this video. I'm standing in this big event in New York, and I get this video from my 5-year-old daughter who's, hi, Mom. I'm just sitting on your bed missing you. But I'm trying really hard not to cry because I really want the money. But I really wish you would come home. So this goes on for like 5 minutes. And she and I show this video every once in a while, a reminder of it, And so I'm standing on the beach in Southern California where she is going to school, on this beautiful beach. And I stop and I turn my video on and I say, hi, Lindsay. This is your mom. Just calling to say how much I miss you and how proud I am of you. And I said, listen, you get to find out who you want to be. You can be whoever you want. You can do good things, great things, amazing things, have a life filled with joy and friends and love and everything that you want. And I said, because God whispers into your ear the desire of your heart, that thing that lives within us that nothing can touch, not calamity, not trauma, not pain, not grief. It lives in the center of your heart. And I said, I know that because you are my heart's desire. And it is by the grace of God that you are who you are and that I have the privilege of being your mom. Thank you.